vital for human health. And within the central nervous system, you have neural circuits that are specific to the organs that they innervate. They are functionally specific, right? And really what's important is that the electrical activity within these circuits is really well regulated and kept under regulation throughout life cycle. And that's really important for maintaining function in basically every single system in the human body. And if that electrical activity, the communication between neurons in those circuits goes awry, then you get really quite significant health deficits. So it's really important that we keep these things in check. And so neurological conditions in general are, a huge and growing problem in society. So referring to this infographic here from the Lancet, you can see that throughout the world, 43% of the population are affected by neurological conditions, right? It's a huge problem. And the effect this has on people's lives is also massive. So estimated 443 million disability adjusted life years, so essentially life lost to ill health, or healthy life lost to ill health. And the main contributors there, you can see, are these disorders here, with stroke being by far the biggest contributor. And I want you to remember that, because stroke is the first indication that we're going after, or an important feature of stroke. So clearly, neural circuit dysfunction, it underlines the symptoms in the majority of these conditions here. And unfortunately, we currently lack treatments that are specific and tunable enough in order to effectively treat these neurological conditions. And so what we really need is to develop therapies with high precision, therapies that can target only the neural circuits that are implicated in the diseases and don't affect off-target neurons, because then that causes other significant adverse effects or side effects. We also need our therapies to be controllable, right? Neurological activity cannot just be turned off or on. It needs to be tightly regulated. So that's a really important part of therapies to be developed in this area. And there is significant opportunity to positively impact millions of lives if we can do this. So how does Sanya plan to do this? So Sanya has developed over the last 3.5 years technology comprising of two main components. The first is precision delivery. So we have to be able to target the right neurons. Okay, the way that we have done this, and Alba can tell you a lot more about it, as this is her domain, is we've developed an AAV evolution platform which makes use of human neural circuits. So we use human iPSC derived neurons and other cells in order to create circuits, essentially in vitro. So this is a human-centric capsid evolution platform that we use to make very, very cell type specific AAVs. The other component of our technology is circuit control, and this is more in my domain. This is what I've been working on over the last 3 years. And here what we have is a gene encoding a therapeutic protein that is packaged into our cell type specific AAVs. It's then delivered locally into the peripheral or central nervous system, where it will be expressed in the target neurons only. So this protein, when expressed, is silent, so it has no effect on neural function at rest, but it can be recruited by an oral medicine. So the patient would take an oral medicine in order to recruit this protein. It'll then change the activity within those cells. And it can also do that in a graduated fashion. So the patient can take a dose of the oral activated drug that recruits the protein to a level appropriate for the change in function that they need. So what does this look like in the clinic then? I mentioned that stroke is a main focus for us, and it's actually something called spasticity that we are going after. So spasticity is a condition whereby muscles essentially contract excessively. Okay, so it's not a disease in and of itself, but it's downstream of many other neurological disorders. So stroke is a main cause, but patients with spinal cord injury, with multiple sclerosis, with traumatic brain injury, for example, they all will suffer from spasticity. And despite the issue being in the muscle, excessive muscle contraction, what actually causes spasticity and that excessive muscle contraction is the motor neurons. So you'll see in this diagram on the left-hand side here in green, the motor neurons in the spinal cord here project to the muscle, and they send signals to the muscle to make it contract. And usually this is very tightly controlled. In spasticity, this goes out of control. And so we have developed AAVs that can be injected into these specific sites in the muscle. They can target the synapses from the motor neurons and travel retrogradely back to the motor neuron cell body, where they express our protein, therapeutic protein, right? So what would happen in the clinic then is your clinician would identify a spastic muscle, inject those muscles. A few months later, once the channel has been expressed, we can then activate that with an oral medicine. And again, the clinician can graduate this to achieve the level of inhibition of the muscle activity that is therapeutic to that patient and no more. So it's really cool technology, and we think it can help a lot of people, millions of people around the world. So my role at Sania, my title has actually changed. So I'm Associate Director of Translational Medicine, and I'll tell you a little bit more about my sort of career path within Sania as well. But this is a role that essentially reflects the progress that Sania has made in the last 3 years. And what I focus on now really is driving the translational activities crucial to actually getting our product, our technology into the clinic to help these patients. Okay, so my journey then. So I started at the end there with Sania. I'd like to go right back to the beginning now, to where I was born and grew up in South Africa. And you might think it's a bit strange to go that far back, but I actually think that the early influences that I had in South Africa have really been instrumental. And these are things that I carry with me and have carried with me throughout my career. So I was born in a really small town in the Eastern Cape of South Africa called Tulba. It's a tiny little town, 9,000 people, I think at the time. But what is really important about South Africa and the sort of attributes and influences that I carry with me are that the South African people are extremely industrious and resourceful. Resources are very much thin on the ground, but they're able to make things happen. They're able to, achieve great success with very little. And as a very fun example here on the right-hand side, I have a ranking of international rugby teams, and you can see these teams are ranked by their wealth essentially, so how much they can pay their players. So on the right-hand side, you can see that South Africa is ranked 7 out of these countries in terms of its wealth. Yeah, if you look on the right-hand side here, oh, sorry, I've lost my light. Apologies, I need to move around a bit more, I think. So despite having very meager resources, South Africa has won 4 World Cups, so way more than any of these top teams here who have much more in terms of resources available to them. So being industrious, being resourceful, really, really key attributes in biotech. Okay, so as an overview of my career, and something I really wanted to highlight at the start is that having a career plan, a very specific and well-planned career path is great. If you have that, it makes things a lot easier. If you struggle with uncertainty, then that's amazing. But I don't think it's necessary. I think the most important thing for anyone is to have a North Star, which sounds cheesy, but essentially what that means is, you want a broad goal, a broad sort of defining driving factor that you always stick to. And for me, that was to make a significant positive impact on society. So that's very broad, right? Doesn't take you to anywhere specific. And what I've sort of done throughout my career from the start to where I am now is, I've honed my interests and then really directed myself towards my North Star. So initially, I was very much interested in sports. I thought I would become a professional sportsman, but then realized I wasn't quite athletic enough. At which point I moved into sports science in order to understand how movement is controlled in general. From there, I realized that the central nervous system is really at the heart of that. The nervous system is responsible for controlling movement. So I did a PhD in neural control of movement, and then moved on to cellular and molecular neuroscience, because I realized that understanding the molecular basis of how neurons function is really the driving factor there. And understanding that would not only enable me to understand how the healthy body moves, but also what goes awry in neurological conditions. And from that point, I moved on to SANIA and drug development. So if we go back to the early academic years, I did my undergraduate degree in sports and exercise physiology. University of Leeds was a great place to do that because the sports science department was integrated within biomedical sciences. So that gave me access to biomedical modules, and you wouldn't get that at other universities, which are more focused on kinematics and psychology, for example. My final year research project for my undergraduate degree was in Professor Ronaldo Chiama's lab, and there I was introduced to the spinal cord and neural circuitry underpinning movement. So, I mean, at this point, like a lot of people, I thought of the spinal cord as just a bundle of wires that transported information from the brain to the muscles. Of course, that's not the case. The spinal cord has rich and complex circuitry and is really important for coordinating movement. So that was really driven home in that PhD. So the PhD itself was on spinal circuits, but in the context of reorganization after spinal cord injury. So I was looking at what changes happen in the spinal cord and the circuitry specifically that enable recovery of function in some cases, but also cause maladaptive symptoms as well. So this is when I really started to think about spasticity and the underlying pathophysiology. So moving on from my PhD, then I moved to UCL, the Queen Square Institute of Neurology, where I worked in Professor Rob Brownstone's lab. So Rob's lab is focused on looking at control of movement from the molecular to the human level, right? So Rob is a clinician himself, so he puts a big emphasis on being able to translate understanding from the bench to the bedside. And the Institute of Neurology in particular is an excellent place to study neuroscience, I think, because you have these research labs that are connected to the hospital, and you have all these clinician scientists who are embedded within the department. And I think that really got me thinking about translational research and how I could have the biggest impact possible with my research career. I really loved academic research. I loved the freedom to be able to explore how things work for the sake of it. I was in a fantastic lab. We're doing really impactful work. And I was beginning to develop my own research direction and thinking about an independent research career. Of course, the hours are long in academia. I think any bench scientist will attest to that, but really rewarding. And there's also a certain amount of flexibility that comes with this kind of career. So why did I leave academia then? I think so. This all came back to my North Star of really wanting to have the biggest impact possible on society. I wanted to stay in contact with cutting edge science, but I wanted to apply that in a different environment to academia. So again, like going back to what I said in that one of my first slides, I hadn't planned this. It wasn't the next step wasn't particularly well thought out, which I wouldn't suggest, but I had an idea of where I was going. So I took this leap, decided to instigate change, and spoke to my supervisor, told him that I was going to leave and move in a different direction. And there was a certain amount of serendipity there because Rob just happened to be in the process with his co-founders of setting up Sania Therapeutics, and he explained to me what Sania was trying to do, and I decided that this was really aligned with where I wanted to go. It was a great mix of the research I had been doing early in my career and being able to apply that and make a really big impact on people's lives. So I took a risk. Not in particular, it was a risk because Sania was more or less just an idea at this point. Alba had done some of the groundwork in the background in her lab. But if you look at this picture on the right here, this is what Sania looked like when we founded the company. It was essentially just a deserted office area. So I was taking a big risk in terms of going into something that we would have to build from the ground up, essentially. So a little bit about my journey within Sania then. So I've had a couple of title changes while I've been at Sania, and again, this reflects how the company progressed. So started out as a senior scientist, so fresh out of academia, and really the main things that we were doing there in the first few months were just setting the company up. So designing the lab, getting the infrastructure in place, IT infrastructure, hiring, things like this, laying the foundations in order to build a successful biotech company. The other main thing I was doing at the time was designing our therapeutic cargo, because at the time we didn't have anything. And then on top of that, really just learning the industry. And you'll see that I put that throughout here because I don't think you ever stop learning the industry. Next, I got the title of Head of Chemogenetic Neuromodulation, and there the focus was really building out my research group, small research group, in order to validate the therapeutic. We also did some portfolio expansion, and we, of course, secured more intellectual property, which is absolutely vital to any biotech company. Fundraising is a huge part of biotech, as it is in academia, although in different ways. So here, this involved speaking to investors, being involved in diligence, getting them to, helping them to know the company and really feel comfortable with investing in us. And like I said, now I have moved to more of a translational role. We have a product that has produced excellent results in proof of concept studies in a spasticity model. And so now what we're doing is we're really trying to drive our therapeutic towards the clinic. So performing or designing all the studies that need to be done to validate the safety and the efficacy of the product, managing our external partners who are helping us to develop the product, working on the regulatory strategy, which agencies we're going to go to, as well as developing our clinical plan. So key lessons then, I think from the outset, really important to establish what is your North Star, which direction do you want to be going? And even if you are not 100% sure about where you want to end up, what your final destination is, that can change. I think it's important to be comfortable with uncertainty. I think one of the things or misconceptions about biotech for me was I thought I would be going into a job that had a high level of security. Biotech in general does not have the highest levels of job security, but that's okay. I think you do what interests you, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to pivot if you feel like you are going off track or you're not heading in the direction that you want to be going in. So again, really important to be industrious and resourceful. And finally, both academia and industry are fantastic for different reasons. So, staying in academia and being successful there, I think is also fantastic. Okay, so that is me. I will pass over to Alba now to take over and tell you about her journey.
Thank you, Calvin. And thank you, the organizers, for giving us this platform. I think it's great. And I'm always happy to speak more about our journeys and because I don't think I had a clear idea when I started, even I will explain, but I don't think I ever had a clear idea of what I wanted to do next. So seeing few people and looking at the journeys, I think is a great thing. In general. So Calvin, you will have to bear with me because I did put some animation, so I will just tell you. So yeah, you can go to the next one. So you will see that Calvin and I actually have parallel tracks, and quite a lot of the things are clashing between his career and my career. So we both share a lot of interest and weird love for the spinal cord, as as you will see. But also in terms of Sania, we've started at the same time. We've kind of had a parallel track, but there's some differences, and I would like to cover different aspects that Calvin might have not covered. So a little about me. So I come from Valencia, so really sunny place. But then science moved me a bit north. So went actually to Aberdeen to do my PhD, and then back to London for the rest of my career. I come from a family of photographers, so everyone in my family is a photographer. And I like to say that I carry the tradition because in my case, I do focus in tiny things instead of portraits. But I do spend a good amount of time with lenses and microscopes. So that's still there. I got married last year, actually about a year ago now, and I'm soon to be a mom to a baby girl. So looking forward for the next chapter, which is quite an exciting one.
Good.
And yeah, love cycling and staying active and all sorts of footy. Obviously, paella is my to-go thing as a good person from Valencia. So if you go to the next one, Calvin. Actually, my road was never an easy or a straight line one. I did not know exactly what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be impactful in society, but wasn't really too sure. At the time, there was this advert on the TV that said that you could be the next researcher that found the cure to AIDS, and I thought that was great. And I thought that could be me, but it wasn't something that it was that clearly embedded in my head. So when it came to choose which degree to do, I actually had a long list, which included things from physiotherapy to dentistry to biochemistry. And thankfully enough, I did go for biochemistry and biomedical sciences. And I had a really good honors project that allowed me to work in a lab for a long period of time, where I had really good mentors. And this is when I thought okay, this is me. I want to have a future in a lab setting. So passion started there and moved me to the next step. So funny enough, although the project was in breast cancer biology, I did always like neuroscience, and that was a thing that wasn't really covered too much in my degree. So I thought, why not? Why don't I go to a master in neuroscience? So I get the knowledge that I didn't have during my degree. So did a master in neuroscience and biotechnology, and this is when I had my I got drawn to the spinal cord injury research. So I had again the opportunity to do a quite long project in a lab based in Valencia, where I was already working in axonal regeneration and biomaterials. So that moment I thought my career is quite clear. I can, like, the next step for me is a PhD. But obviously, as we all know, like, Spain is not the greatest in science, so I had to find opportunities somewhere else. So in my case, I thought I will find the project that suited me without actually looking very much at the map. And this is what actually took me to Aberdeen University. So it was a perfect project for me that fit like tick all the boxes that I wanted to do. And during that time is when I actually understood that although it was based in axonal regeneration, not everything was about neurons, and it was more like the environment and the things around the neurons and the circuitry that actually led to a success in the therapy that I was trying. So, and that took me by chance actually to my next step. So when I finished my PhD, I started as a scientist in the neuroinflammation team at Lilly. I never thought I would go to industry. I actually never thought about like whether academia or industry was my thing. I just like science, and it sounded great what they were aiming to do. So I took the chance, really like not knowing too much what I was going into, but I immediately understood that it's actually like a great place to be. So feeding from basic research, even in a large corporation, applying those techniques, applying that knowledge, and trying to make it into like actual drugs that the patients can take was a thing that motivated me quite a lot. I also learned in the hard way what industry is like. So sadly, like a year after I joined them, they actually closed a neuroscience site at UK. So that actually showed me the misconception that Calvin was talking about before, that I thought like, maybe this is an unstable thing and you don't have to worry about like grants or whatever, but it's actually not a real thing. I want to leave this very clear. But actually, it was this that gave me one of the biggest opportunities, because at the time, Andy was one of the PIs, was advertising this postdoc that was based at Sainsbury Wellcome Centre, but also Institute of Neurology, that also like tick all the boxes in the things that I wanted to do. And because I hadn't done a postdoc at the time, I thought maybe this is a time for me, and I actually get a flavor of both places, and then I get to choose. Because as I said, like I've always been interested in science and didn't really quite like to discern between, or like distinguish too much between the two, academia versus industry. So like went back to academia. I have to say probably it wasn't a real postdoc per se, because it was made very clear from the beginning that there was this possibility of transitioning to a startup. But we ended up spending like a couple of years building like some of the foundations of like what Sania was to become later. But it was a great opportunity because it got me like in the right spot at the right time to actually get the next step, which is senior scientist within Sania. So that's when I discovered the startup life. And I always like to say that is where my passion met opportunity. So yeah, I think like that's what actually when I met Calvin and the rest of the team. So I thought like it was a great idea. I don't think I was ever too sure. Like when I joined UCL as a postdoc, I wasn't like for sure too aware of like what Sania will become later and what opportunities will give me later on. So if you go to the next one, Calvin. So within Sania, I left the same structure that Calvin presented, because we actually had like the same type of like title changes, but it's because like it really reflects how Sanya has evolved. So at the beginning, and I want to make something very clear, which is this reflects a startup or like a small biotech, where you do wear like multiple hats and things change all the time. And it's true that like big pharmas or other like different places can be like completely different. So this for me only reflects what like a startup kind of thing looks like. So at the beginning, we were all senior scientists. When I say all, like it was like literally 3 of us and the founders, and we did everything. So anything from like company setup, from like designing where to put a particular like bench, talent recruitment, and obviously learning industry. I left that there, but those were the things that kept us awake at night. And those were the challenges that we were facing at the beginning. As we transition in the next phase, then it was more about like building the teams, like getting the first proof of concept studies, like obviously building the platform. So those, when we were like getting a bit more serious, those were the things that then like kept us away. And then as at the moment we are now, even if the team is not like particularly big, we are putting a bit more of a structure. So there's now a bit more of a like a description of what our roles are, but you still have like to wear multiple hats. So you are expected to be talking about like super important like assay design and experimental design, but also you could be talking about like a problem with the CO2, I don't know, like CO2 leaks in the lab or like whatever else. Like there's an infinite amount of things that you are exposed to, which I particularly like a lot. There's something as well that is worth mentioning, which is a startup has a lot of like change, and so navigating that change and navigating uncertainty is quite a key thing that you have to learn. It's not that you don't find that in other places, but like startup is actually quite fast paced, and you learn that the hard way, I would say. So next one, Calvin. So I did put like few of the things that I thought, or in my case, I think they are transferable skills between academia and industry. And some of them perhaps come from the fact that part of my academic career was also done in Spain, where some of the resources are limited, and you will see what I'm talking about now. So I think one of the key things is like academic people and people with an academic background and setting and mindset are very resourceful. So like Calvin already touched on this, but like when you do your master project or your PhD project, you actually have to control budget, you control your timelines, you control your deadlines, as well as experiments, and you juggle like multiple things, like anything from your personal life to like the keeping in touch with like science and like your project, and you might have students under you. So there's a lot of things that you actually learn. Sometimes you also have to make your experiments happen with what you have available, right? So you will work with people collaborating with different departments to get use of their machines or whatever. So it's actually like it does give you a lot of like ability to like think in multiple ways. Cost management is something that sometimes I've been told I have like too cheap mentality for industry, but like in my case, I think it's worked out great, because like even when you work in a large pharma where like budget is like obviously maybe not like that much of a constraint when compared to like a postdoc where you have a limited one, you still have to control that. So and especially in places where the budget is limited, you have a specific amount to get your experiments on. So I think that is actually that kind of skill that you learn in academia that is like really transferable, and like anyone wanted to make the move to industry should like really use and exploit as well. Resilience is obviously something that I think every scientist has, but specifically as well like academic people. So I think it's very much the transferable skill between academic and industry, and obviously adaptability. So I think like everyone has done PhD has had an experience probably of like changing something in the project that like all of a sudden diverts you and you have to go a different way. And that's also something that happens in industry, right? Like a decision might be made from the top and you have to readapt, or the data might take you somewhere else. So that's something that is actually like really nice to have. See, next one. And yeah, so and I also wanted to end with like the personal tips that I will give if someone was to ask me for navigating industry. Obviously, I'm still learning because it's still like quite early in my career, I would say. But super important is stay curious, right? Science is science, and whether you do this in an academic environment, industry, or any other setting, if you have like this passion, like there will always be like a path for you. And curiosity, having that curiosity keeps you adaptable and innovative, and that's like a key thing for navigating industry as well as life in general, but like especially industry. I would say another really important thing is keep the right mindset. So I think Calvin also touched on this, but you have to be open to opportunities, even unexpected ones. So when you start a path like this, you don't know where you are gonna end up. And it's, a career path is rarely a straight line. So I've met people that from an academic, an academic scientist background go then into IP attorneys because they absolutely love that, and they become that because they have that knowledge. But also people that will become like experts in regulatory, and they will have a career in consultancy. Like there's so many positions that I didn't even know that existed, that when you are not exposed to them, like you had no idea. And so you can't really like imagine that you will end up in that position if you haven't been exposed to that, right? So if you are open to opportunities, like everything like will open up for you as well. And then lastly, and super importantly, and I think this is one of the things that actually like reinforce my how much I like industry as well, is the teamwork. So this sentence that is like super famous: so if you want to go fast, go alone; if you want to go far, go together. So collaboration is key for making an impact in industry. So one of the key things in industry that might differ slightly from academia is that there's always like a common goal, which is making a therapy for the patients. So in any setting, but particularly in industry, like I would say, like embracing teamwork is one of the key things. So I think that's it for me. Probably spoke too much, but yeah, those were the main things I wanted to touch on.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alba and Calvin. It's been very refreshing, very nice to see you and to listen to your journeys. And the way you talk about your experience is so authentic and touching. So thank you from myself and from the whole of the Bsgct, and also the attendees, I'm sure. So I guess while the floor heats up with possible questions, Ellie and I will start. So first of all, congratulations to you both. I gave the wrong introduction because I wasn't aware about the new title, so that's fantastic news. And also apologies for creating fusions of your names at the beginning. It's quite nice to introduce you and having you here today.
To be fair, Ricardo, we work so closely together, we might as well fuse our names together. It's easier.
Funny what my brain created those versions, not that I had ever thought about that. So I think I want to start with a like fun question. What has been your favorite part so far in your respective journeys?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ricardo. I think my favorite part, I think, is being able to take an idea and turn it into a product that can really help people. Like we're really starting to see now with the results that we're outputting that, you know, this could work and this could help people. So I think being able to build that from scratch, like hit the milestones, and actually prove that something could work, has been the most rewarding thing for me so far.
I agree with Calvin. Although I would say as well, like the beginning was quite a fun time for me too. So yeah, from what it was an idea at some point, like some like pages put in a draft, and then eventually like visits to like empty labs or empty lab spaces or potential empty lab spaces, and then building the team, like buying the things, like still remember the days that all together, Ricardo as well, opening the boxes of the first instruments that will go on the benches. That was like for me the real when reality hit, and it's like, okay, this is actually real, and we can make an impact.
Thank you for your answers. So we have some questions from the public. Say, Alice asking, would you then recommend to do a PhD in academia, or is it better to apply for an industry position straight away?
I would say, sorry, Calvin. I've definitely seen both profiles in industry, both in biotech and in pharma. I would say it's not necessary, but I, as a scientist, like if you have like this, well, maybe I'm not the best example because I will always recommend a PhD, pursuing a PhD if you want one, regardless of like where you want to like have your career later. So for me, it's more like if you have that interest, I would recommend doing that. I saw when I was at Lilly, there were a lot of like PhDs that were actually in collaboration with industry. So I think that could be like a really good option that already takes you like a step forward. So maybe that's something that combines both things. It's definitely not necessary, but I think it's more of a personal choice. So if you have doubts or if you want to do it, like go for it, because there's nothing like against it, right?
Yeah, and I would just add to that I think when like a PhD is long and it's really hard, and you're focusing on one topic basically night and day. It's all you live it, you sleep it. So I think you have to really be in love with the topic and the science. So I would rather pick a PhD based on the science and the lab and the type of work that you're going to be doing. Obviously, it's important to if you can think about where that might take you. So if you do want to work in biotech eventually, then having a PhD with a translational spin to it would be advantageous. But you have to be in love with the science. I think it's impossible to get through a PhD without that.
Thank you both. I was thinking what I found really beautiful from what you both shared, and I think we have this in common, is that for you, it wouldn't matter exactly in which frame you would be in, as long as you're doing good science and robust science, and that aligns with your passion. And I think that is something I'm very passionate about, where it kind of makes us sort of agnostic to the environment, whether it's academia, whether it's industry. But I think the way we have, I mean, the field has been thinking about academia and industry, it's that they are two separate worlds and they don't need to be. And so I remember having conversations with the CEO at the time and trying to think of ways, can we bring in undergraduate or master students to do like an internship? And I'm sure that I know that these programs are now becoming more frequent, but I was mentoring someone on actually the Bsgct mentoring scheme, and they were asking me, how can I get a foot into industry? Because every time you try and apply for a job in industry, there is this gap if you're coming from academia. So I think what Ellie, myself, and Ali, and the rest of the Bsgct really as a society is trying to do is to reduce that gap between academia and industry. I think there are many examples, including myself, that this can be done, and I think that the field is moving towards a more flexible and more of a crosstalk between these two worlds. I think we had another question. Sorry, did you want to add?
No, I was just going to say I 100% agree with that. I think when you boil it down, whether you're in a biotech lab or an academic lab, you want to do the best science possible. You want to be really rigorous, and you want to make sure that your work is impactful. So, if those are skills you've honed in academia, those fit right into any biotech that you might apply to.
Following on from that, with the kind of flexibility aspect, do you think that you find, like, if you find something in an experiment or whatever it is that you're working on at the time, how much sort of freedom is there to like go in a different direction, like as the scientist yourself, or do you think some of these decisions come from higher up and you sort of go with it? Like, what is the sort of flexibility or freedom type in your day-to-day role?
I don't know if you want to start there, Alba, but I mean, from my point of view, I think that is maybe one of the biggest differences. And one of the things I found most challenging moving from academia to industry is there's certainly a lot more freedom in academia, depending on the lab you're in, of course, to follow your own interests and follow those leads and see where they take you. I would say it is a lot more structured in biotech, right? We all have a common goal, as Albert spoke about, and it's really important that we meet our milestones and push things towards the clinic. So I would say it is much more structured in that respect. That said, if people who have interesting ideas, crazy ideas, they are very welcome as well. Those ideas are welcome, and that might be the start of a new indication or a new target. So it's encouraged, but I think within the framework and structure.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. So in the two places that I've worked, like both in the big pharma and Sania, there was a space for those crazy ideas to like develop or like be thought about. However, you still have to meet your like milestones and like see all the like score. Like you might need to like leave it aside for once there is a bit more time to explore them.
Thank you. I think we had a question from Rebecca. So thank you for such an inspiring talk. I was wondering if in your experience you noticed a big difference in work-life balance between industry and academia.
Yeah, maybe I can take this one. Yeah, that's probably very true for me. Obviously, this is very personal because it really depends where you were doing your PhD, postdoc, and where you work now. But like my transition, or the first time I saw the transitions, one was like straight from PhD, where I was obviously doing like really long hours to make it work on like probably things that if you in hindsight is like that's probably not right, to like a large corporation where like people like stop working when they should stop working, and they wouldn't take those things home, and like weekends were kind of like your thing, and if you're doing more hours then it will come back. So that's probably not like truly like true in the startup now. Like you still like it's up to you really like your working pattern, but in general is much more like I have a team as well that I want to take care of, and I will always try to make sure that they keep that life work balance, because it's one of the key things for us as well, like is hoping that they don't suffer any burnout, and like neither us obviously. But yeah, I will say from my experience, working in industry does have a bit more like work-life balance. You're still a scientist though, so those things still apply, but maybe a bit more like over, yeah.
Yeah, 100% agree. I'd say for me, yeah, again, I think it comes down to structure. I perhaps lacked structure when I worked in academia, and so I think I worked probably longer hours for longer stretches of time, whereas My experience in biotech so far is, again, we have our milestones, and we work as hard as we need to in order to meet those milestones. But again, it's within a structure, and you make sure that there is a work-life balance. So I 100% agree with Albert.
You both talked about sort of having your own teams and stuff now. So what did you find with the progression from being a senior scientist in the beginning to now having your own teams? And how much sort of autonomy do you have over your own team while still being within a company?
It's a great question, actually, because it's one of the biggest things, obviously, like having to change from like being an independent contributor to actually like taking care not only about like what you do, but like also others. It was a big change for me, and like I like a massive learning curve. So oh, I had like experience in mentorship before and things like that, but like obviously you have to take it like to the next level and like actually be serious. um we obviously, because we were putting Sanya, like building Sanya from scratch, we also have to think that those teams are also being put from scratch, so every policy, everything. So we didn't have a structure, like a proper structure, until like maybe like later phases, like now. So everything was be like up in the air, but for me, it's been like great learning experience to, yeah, you be able to set objectives of like the different people to meet like the milestones that your team have, and like motivating like them as well as obviously yourself to like keep pushing and moving forward. But I would say like it's a slightly complex in our case, because like, as we were transitioning into that phase, so was the company as well. So like putting together all these things was it's been quite a thing.
Yeah, I would say there's probably some parallels with becoming a PI in academia as well, where you have to sort of be comfortable with stepping back and letting your team take hold of the science, giving them direction, and then empowering them to actually do the science. That I have to say was difficult initially, but it's something that you get used to. In terms of us being empowered to lead our teams, we are for the large part empowered to lead our teams and make decisions. Obviously, when there are decisions that may impact the company goals at large, then that's important to escalate. So yeah, we are empowered, but there's a very much a collaborative management structure between us and like the senior leadership team.
We have another question from the audience. Esther, thanks for sharing your experience. What about those that have been in academia for a long time? I find it difficult to find positions that are not entry level without any experience in industry.
Sorry, do you want to go, Alba?
No, up to you.
Yeah, so obviously Alba and I had a bit of a different route into industry. What I can say from the point of view of someone who's been hiring people into a biotech company, the job requirements that are put on these job adverts are usually sort of way beyond what's actually required. So I would say speculative inquiries are definitely encouraged. So even if you think you don't meet the job specifications, if you're a good scientist and you can demonstrate that, you're going to be snapped up. I think the other thing is the job adverts that you see are really the tip of the iceberg. And the best thing you can do, I think, is to speak to people in industry, ask what their recruitment plans are over the next few months to years, to get yourself that foot in the door, right? Because we've definitely hired people when we haven't been in hiring cycles. So I definitely recommend that you do that. Another point I'll just make, actually, while we're on this, about interviews is definitely don't be negative about academia when you're in interviews, because we have interviewed quite a lot of people who would state that they are applying for the job because of how fed up they are with academia, and that's definitely not a nice thing to hear. You need to be really positive about your previous experiences and how you can translate what you've learned into the company, and how excited you are about the work that company is doing.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of skills that can be used, so definitely use that potential. I don't know if Ellie and Ricardo, you might agree, but like what I saw in the gene therapy field is that there's a lot of crosstalk, as you, Ricardo, were saying, and I guess it's because it's relatively new compared to others. That there's a lot of more people that have made their path in, like, whether in industry or academia. So like what I find, for example, like in spinal cord injury is much more niche. Like you belong to academia, you belong to like industry, and there's not many industry out there. But like what I see in like the British, the European, the like international conferences of like cell and gene therapy is that there's actually like a lot of like interconnectivity between the two. So I think that's a good point, and like what Calvin was saying, like of using those strengths and like selling those strengths, because they are really applicable to industry. So even if you have spent like a long time of your career in academia, that's not a bad thing at all.
Thank you. Yes, and that's why we are committed to making this crosstalk more visible, more accessible, and that's why I'm so grateful that you guys are here today. I think what the field has to do a bit better is perhaps to, as I said before, reduce that gap at more junior positions, because I think that's the main barrier that we find when people are just out of a master's or. But as you guys said, if you can demonstrate you have those skills, you're a good scientist. That's the good science. So if there is good science, that's where you need a good scientist. And it's very refreshing to hear it from you. Okay, I think we're coming to an end. So just very aptly, our next Bsgct ECR webinar will be about CV writing for industry. So again, this is a testament into our investment. So this was an idea of our recent addition to the co-chairs, Dr. Ali Tehera. So please tune in. We will start advertising soon. And I can only thank you once more. Thank you, Alba and Calvin, and thank you everyone for joining today.
Thank you so much for the invite, Ricardo. It was really fun.
Thank you.